How do the political groups in Parliament actually work? To find out, I'll play the role of a newly elected MEP. So it's off to Parliament. Amongst those who voted for me to be here today, most choose my party rather than me personally. And there are more than 100 parties like mine in the Parliament. Welcome to one of the 2 European Parliament hemicycles. All MEPs can meet together here. But if 100 parties had to negotiate EU issues separately, chaos would soon break out. Therefore, to make discussions in the Parliament more efficient, several transnational political groups are formed before the first plenary session, because once in the hemicycle, MEPs are seated in their groups. But how am I going to go about choosing my new family? I'm not going to choose on the basis of my nationality, but rather according to political affinity. If my values were generally socialist, I would be seated here. If they were liberal, I would be seated in this area. But they could also be conservative or green, amongst others. And here, at the far right end of the hemicycle, is where the non-attached members sit. These are the MEPs who are not affiliated to any political group. For a group to be formed, they must have at least 25 members from at least a quarter of EU member states. That's 7 countries. There are many advantages of forming a political group. A group has the right to a secretariat and to choose its own members rather than depending on EP staff. They have the right to an extra budget for staff and for their political activities. In 2014, for example, the total budget divided between the various groups totaled almost 60 million euros. So now a change of scenery. The groups show their political weight well before the plenary session. In rooms such as this one here, the groups debate the reports, which will be voted on in the following plenary session, discussing amendments they want to put forward and their common position. But remember, no MEP is obliged to vote in a specific way.
In general, the groups at the center of the political spectrum are more cohesive. You take the Greens, for example, they have been the most cohesive in the past term, having a rate of about 96%. The EPP is also about the same level at 94%, the same for the Socialists, a little bit lower for the ALDE group. But then if you take the groups at the extremes, the far left is least cohesive, and then the EFD doesn't even function ideologically wise as a group. The MEPs in the EFD group have voted united 50% of the time, and the rest of the time they have voted against each other because they have very different opinions.
It's also here that MEPs decide upon the candidates they will put forward for key posts, such as the President of the Parliament, Vice Presidents, Presidents of the Parliamentary Committees and the Parliamentary Advisers. Final negotiations on the distribution of roles and the makeup of parliamentary committees and delegations is then determined by the President of the Parliament and the Group Presidents. This is known as the Conference of Presidents, and it takes place about twice a month. And last but not least are the political groups' powers, setting the Parliament's agenda, another responsibility of the Conference of Presidents. Each of the established groups therefore has a say in these vital decisions.